Hello, and welcome to the Cash-Based Practice Podcast, a production of drjarodcarter.com, aimed at giving physical therapists and other healthcare practice owners the information needed for success in the private pay business model. And now, here's your host, Jarod Carter.
Hello and welcome back. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Today is not an interview and it's not an excerpt of a mastermind call or any past podcast. Today, I felt like it was a great opportunity, a great time to look at 2020 and look at what I've done in my practice to keep it alive and thriving, as well as what I have planned for the rest of 2020 and into 2021. I think this is going to be a really useful set of ideas of things that I've already shown to be effective, as well as the things I have on the horizon and why I'm going to be focusing on those things. And so I hope you get a lot out of this. I really think you will. It's been obviously the most interesting year in quite a while, at least for most practices. But in the midst of so many practices and businesses in general kind of going under or really being hurt, I have seen many practices, and a good number of them in my mastermind group, that have actually launched and filled up during this time. Or well-established practices, completely stay afloat, maybe take a little bit of a hit in the beginning, but now they're back to, pre-COVID levels of patients and revenue. So there's a lot of wonderful success stories out there, and there it's, as we dig into why different practices have done well and why others haven't, it's quite clear that certain strategies and tactics and approaches to marketing, as well as mindset, has had a big effect on that and the outcomes that business owners have had this year. And of course, I'm speaking specifically to healthcare businesses, because there are some business owners that are incredible in the world of business, but given the industry they're in, there was no avoiding taking an enormous hit. But in healthcare, I've seen it done really well, and I'm proud and excited to say that my own practice, so certainly is not going to set revenue records. It's really stayed pretty darn steady, and I want to give you guys all the different things that we've been doing. Some have been mentioned in recent podcasts and the courses and stuff that I've been creating around that, but a lot of it has not been mentioned. So this is going to be a really informative one for you. And I'm going to say before I dive into that here, going into the Labor Day weekend, I was thinking about this the other day, and when I realized, oh wow, Labor Day is coming up, that I am just ever more grateful in these times to be an entrepreneur, to really be in the in the driver's seat of my quote unquote labor. My success, my job, and my income is in my hands, no one else's. It's not that I can control every factor that's thrown at those things, but to be in the driver's seat, I've never been more grateful than in these crazy times, because there's so many people obviously that just lose their jobs, and so many business owners that have not been able to do as well. Maybe they didn't have the strategies and the information, or just other factors were involved. But I'm just grateful to be going into Labor Day in truly having the freedom to steer my own ship, and that's what this is really about. Now, that freedom also comes with a cost, right? I mean, like this Labor Day, I'm going to be working through the entire weekend, probably on Labor Day as well, and I'll tell you more about that later. It's actually primarily going to be working on a brand new business that I'm launching as I record this. Probably going to be doing a full announcement of it tomorrow, and later at the end of this podcast, I'll tell you what it is. It has nothing to do with PT. And I'm really excited about it. But yeah, when you put yourself in that position and it's all on you, well, it's all on you. But you do have the freedom, to spend your day and spend your time how you want. And I'm excited to be in that situation here, moving into another Labor Day weekend, even in the midst of a pandemic and probably the starts of a recession. So, with all that said, we are doing a big promotion of all of my courses, the mastermind group, books, everything at drjarodcarter.com. If you use the promo code as you check out, FREEDOM, you just type in the word FREEDOM, you'll get 20% off, which is quite sizable percentage discount on a lot of these that are already priced purposely to be, hugely discounted for what you actually get. So if you've been interested in any of my courses or books or joining us in the mastermind, you can do so at a really big discount between now and the end of Labor Day, Monday night. Okay, so 2020 started off fine. I had relatively recently brought on a new admin, but she was really off to the races at that point and doing well. We were pretty booked. I had kind of one mostly full-time therapist, myself part-time working with patients on Wednesdays still, and then another part-time therapist working a few afternoons a week. And things were rocking along, and then of course here comes COVID-19, the pandemic starts. And for those who have been listening to this podcast regularly or listened back to earlier episodes, kind of the story there where we had a patient report that they had been exposed. They hadn't been in a couple weeks, but at that point, I really didn't understand, the data, or there wasn't enough information on how this could be done safely in a private practice like ours, and I didn't want to put clients or staff at risk, and so just said, let's just go full telehealth until we figure this out. And we did, and within 48 hours, we had converted completely to telehealth. We got the system set up. I documented that process. This is a totally free resource. If you're still not on telehealth and wondering how to get it going quickly, you can go to drjarodcarter.com/telehealth, I think it is, and that'll take you where you can just download this document where I just said, what do we do in those 48 hours to get this going quickly? And so we got it going, and we retained about 50% of our current in-clinic plans of care as telehealth, which was actually pretty darn good. And I'll say this a few times, but the initial key, not just with telehealth transition, but with just maintaining business in these times and this year as a whole, the key has been individual outreach and even mass outreach to current and past patients, and just really, really following up. The follow-up has been a huge focus for me, and I attribute a great deal of the success of my practice in this crazy year to focusing on follow-up and focusing on outreach. So we reached out to obviously every current plan of care to get them to convert, but we reached out via email and personal text to all my 1,000+ past patients. And between that, or with doing that initially, we were able to maintain, enough business. No one had to get laid off or any of that kind of stuff, and we did pretty well initially. Then my focus was on, okay, we're going to do our best to maintain plans of care and get past patients reactivated. How can we get new patients? And that's where I turned to webinars. It just kind of hit me. It was like, how can we have the power of the face-to-face-ish, but real-time relationship building, they're looking at you at least, style of marketing that has been so powerful for my practice and many others. How can we do that in these days when no one wants to leave their home? And this is, again, still back in like March and April. So we went with webinars and figured out how to do online workshops via webinar platforms, and they worked incredibly well. They still do. We've had, we put it all into the online patient attraction system course that we then launched, I think, in May. And the results of the students in that course, those who have shared with me, it's been phenomenal. It's really, really helped to keep practices alive and thriving and growing in many cases. So if you want to check that out again this weekend, that's 20% off. And you can find, if you go to drjarodcarter.com and you click, there's a tab at the top. It says courses and workshops. That's where you'll find the courses. I think I have the mastermind on there on that tab as well. It's very easy to find all the books and resources and the mastermind group levels and all that kind of stuff. Just go to the website and surf around. So we've been doing the workshops. That was awesome for not just getting new patients and not just getting telehealth patients, but once we were back in the clinic, also reactivating past patients and getting new patients to come into the clinic. So it worked really well for both, and we continue to do those about once a month. I will say that it's been interesting. Early on, I was able to kind of leverage my organic social media following and my email list and even personal outreach via text to keep those workshops relatively full, it's become harder and harder because I've been doing lately the same workshop. And so we've turned to Facebook ads to get them full. And we've tested and tweaked, and we've found some ways to get the signups we want. But what we're looking at now is the fact that, at least so far, the show up rate for the workshops has not been nearly as good when we get someone off of a Facebook ad to register as if we get someone who's a semi-warm contact or we get in front of them via organic social media. So the work continues on that as we try to figure out how to get people to show up, because that's really where the highest conversions occur, is those that actually show up live to those workshops if you're doing them right. So that was kind of that initial transition to telehealth, and about, I can't remember if it was maybe 6-8 weeks after that, we felt like it was we could do it with enough safety precautions that I didn't feel like we were putting people in significant danger or any major danger at all, whether it's my clients or my staff. And everyone was comfortable going back, and we take all the different precautions and all that. And so when we went back in to the clinic, again, it was that personal outreach and the follow-up with all the past patients, and we had a list of people that were waiting to get back in the clinic. They didn't want to do telehealth. So we were slammed that first month after. It was like boom. And I'll mention this too, something I don't know how much I talked about before, is that in the midst of that, in March and April and kind of part of May, I lost my practice administrator. It was COVID related to something with her family, so she had to leave. And then I lost my primary physical therapist and I had to replace her. She had to go back to South Africa. And so I got a badass therapist, fellowship trained manual therapist, 15 years in the field, just really super lucky and excited to have him. And he, hit the ground running. And so I still have those two therapists, and we've actually, built out, and we're covering more hours of the week. So we have actually grown. And I would say that, having to deal with that in the midst of everything else, it's, it threw an interesting twist on things as well, because now I got to hire and train a brand new admin. And I think I mentioned this before, is my admin now, she was one of the very first patients of Carter Physiotherapy. It was really cool to hire her. She had to be, patient maybe 3 or 4 or 5. And now she's working with us, and it's been great. So we're back in the clinic, and we're totally slammed at first because so many people were waiting to get back in. And then an interesting thing happened. A few years ago, I ran a bunch of numbers and kind of came up with our kind of average number of visits per plan of care. And with that number and that revenue number, you really need that to know that number to make really good decisions, but it also helps with predictions. And based on that number, I started to predict. I was like, man, we're slammed because there were a bunch of people waiting to come in, but we were not getting as many new patients as I knew we needed in order to avoid a big slowdown. And what I mean by that, I'll just kind of give you the number. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have 100 hours in the clinic to fill to keep to fully book your staff, right? You or your staff, and 100 patient hours, and you've run the numbers and found out that, we'll just say for ease of math, that your average plan of care is 5 visits, 5 hours in the clinic. Okay, so 100 divided by 5 is 20. You need roughly 20 new patients a week in order to keep that 100 hours a week relatively full with patient care. And so when I was running those numbers in the same way, I was like, okay, we need X number of new patients to be relatively full, right? And we're getting, half that, or not maybe half, but less, definitely less. And so I'd kind of started to predict that at week 6 or 7 from when we got that big, we got back in the clinic and we're super busy, that we were going to see a pretty solid slowdown, because in multiple weeks in a row, we were underneath that target initial evaluation number. But it didn't happen. And I was like, what's going on? And so I dug in the numbers and looked at it, and I realized that our average plans of care, that number that I had been basing things on from a few years ago, had actually gotten longer. And it's not because we're less effective as therapists than we were back then. It's because we have a lower drop-off rate now. And that, I track back to why is that? And it no doubt has to do with our focus on follow-up. So when all this was going on, I was constantly telling staff, I was like, look, we cannot let anyone slip through the cracks, whether it's a lead that we're trying to get to become a new patient, or it's an established patient who said, I need to look at my schedule and then I'll call you, or canceled online and we never followed up. I mean, that kind of stuff would happen all the time in the past because I didn't have such a focus on it and the systems that we have now to track our patients and our leads and make sure that we've adequately followed up with everyone to keep them on schedule or get them on schedule. And so like relentless, like that's our every week in our weekly Zoom staff meeting, that takes the predominant amount of time is looking at, I have my admin get everyone that we've seen in the last 2 weeks that's not booked for another visit. And if they're not discharged, then we're talking about why they fell off and what we're going to do to get them back on. And so we're just relentlessly looking at that. Lowered our drop-off rate. So therefore our plans of care got longer. So therefore the math was off. And that's why we were able to sustain good numbers longer than I expected. And it gave me more of a runway to ramp up my marketing and get things going and kind of make sure that we didn't continue to have initial evaluation numbers that were too low. And we're not 100% where we were pre-COVID, like a lot of my mastermind students are. I'm jealous of some of them, but we're doing pretty darn well, and I'm very happy with it. One of the things that has really come in handy with that, if you're wondering or wanting to implement something like that, is a resource that we have in my mastermind group. We have a whole resources page. It's like a treasure chest. But one of the things we have in there is a Google sheet that my admin created, and you can put an add-on onto this Google spreadsheet, and you can use it to track all current patients and past patients who've recently been discharged, as well as all leads that come in. And so everything goes on that sheet. And then according to when we want to follow up or the last interaction we had with somebody, we can put a dated email reminder into the sheet. So it'll email us with all the details that we want from that patient or the last interaction, their contact info, and we set the date that we want it to email us. It's freaking awesome. Very simple, but man, it's saved us thousands of dollars this year for sure, just because we have that. You will forget, things slip through the cracks, you're busy, you're stressed out, like you have to have some sort of system that is automated or semi-automated that keeps you on point and make sure that no one slips through the cracks, because they will otherwise. Okay, so so things have been rocking and rolling. Like I said, we continue to do online workshops about once a month. We're working on getting a better show up right there. So what's next? Aside from the continued focus on follow-up, right? And aside from my continued focus on the phone call training, that was something I didn't mention earlier, is that just with this new admin, we record our calls. You can do that on certain phone systems. We use RingCentral. And so we record the calls, and every week we sit down and listen to at least one call, and then I record the coaching for future admins. And in fact, we're about probably within the next month, we're going to have a new kind of masterclass mini course for you guys on the "Do you take my insurance?" question. And it's something that I've been diving into deeply with my admin, doing a lot of training there. And so if that sounds interesting to you, keep an ear out. And if you're looking at or listening to this in the future, going to drjarodcarter.com, it's very easy to find any courses that I come up with over time. So that'll be where I don't have a web link right now because we're 3 or 4 weeks out. But very soon we're going to have, an awesome training course on the phone call and especially on the "Do you take my insurance?" question, how to successfully and confidently answer that question. And there is a lot of skill and art to having those conversations and guiding them in certain ways to get maximum conversions of the people that you can help. So continuing to focus on phone call training. That's where the magic happens. All this marketing stuff to get the phone ringing doesn't mean a damn thing if you or the person answering it doesn't know how to have that conversation. So we're keeping our foot on the gas there. But as far as marketing, as far as getting the phone ringing, or getting online leads coming through, there's a few things that we're going to be doing. Or I've already started doing just in the last few weeks. So doubling down on email marketing. The idea here is, with all this stuff, is how can we get and stay in front of people when you can't really do so in person the way you could in normal times, right? There's that staying in front of people on a personal level or a one-to-one or in-person level that's just so powerful. Obviously, I've been big on digital marketing for a long time, and right now, you can do that in a lot of ways. You can stay in front of people in a lot of ways and get in front of them in a lot of different ways online. But what I've decided to focus on is really increasing and improving my email marketing. And so I actually am going to be interviewing soon someone I'm really excited to interview. His name's Dave D. He's a marketing and sales coach. And I've bought his courses, and I've been on his email list for over 2 years, and he emails me every day. He emails his list every day, and I'm sure a few jaws have dropped out there and frowns. I'm sure there's a few frowns that just occurred as they heard that. It's like, how in the world can you be so annoying and so bold to email every day and think that that's going to work? Well, I just told you, I haven't unsubscribed. I look forward to his emails. I learn so much from his emails. And it's not that they're just like pure marketing content. They're story-based. They're entertaining. So I learn how he is consistently on a day-to-day basis able to take something relatively maybe unrelated seeming, benign, I'm trying to think of a good adjective, but just, any little occurrences in his life, things he sees on TV, something he ate, something he spoke to his wife about, something, whatever, current event. I mean, he's able to take things and then divert, give you something entertaining and then kind of convert that attention into what he wants you to do, his call to action for that email. And so I've learned from him on that, and I'm now implementing it with my business. Not every single day, but I am now emailing instead of once a month. I'm emailing every week, and it has been working. It's been so cool when you do story-based, entertaining emails. People respond. I remember the first one. I'll give you an example. I had a really amazing experience with a local Mexican food place where, long story short, I put in an order on Favor, and this was after. It was a Wednesday night, and over the weekend, my daughter Adelaide had these. She keeps having these monthly unexplained fevers, so that was going on. I was working my butt off on the clinic stuff. Then my son had to have a sleep study on Monday night, which meant I took him in for that one. So I was up almost the whole night just because there was all these technical issues with the sleep study. And then I had really busy day, a couple of days of work, and then on that Wednesday, which is my patient care day, I had a full day of telehealth patients. So at the end of that, not only was I exhausted, but I was really looking forward to just a great meal at home, chill out. And one of my favorite places in town is this place called El Dorado. And they're just phenomenal food, both Tex-Mex and interior Mexican, if anyone out there is interested. But I put this order in on Favor, and Favor is the only app that this place worked with. Otherwise, I wouldn't use them because they screw up my orders, and it takes forever. And anyways, finally after 45 minutes, I call. I could tell it was the owner's voice when he answered, and I was like, "Hey, do you have an order in from Favor, for this?" He's like, "No, I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Oh no!" And he's like, "You know what? Give me your address. I'm going to make this right." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Give me your address, actually first give me the order because the kitchen is closing right now. It's 8 o'clock. They're closing down right now." So he quickly puts in my order. 30 minutes later, the owner, is on my doorstep, dropping off this amazing meal. He brought us a hat. It's a really cool hat too, and some extra salsa. And it was just this amazing customer experience, event for me that I then put into this email and just kind of told the story. And I finished it with, I've always strived to make Carter Physiotherapy a place that wows its customers in the way that Joel at El Dorado wowed me. If there's anything that I can do to continue to make that happen, hit reply and let me know, or give us a call or whatever. And I never get replies to my monthly email newsletters. I got like 7 replies to that email. Great story. Oh, I know that place. I love it. 2 of them replied and said, I just ordered food from there because of this email. Like, that's how cool it was. And so it's those kinds of interactions that you can actually have with email if you do it right. And so every week I'm doing a story-based email that has either a soft or firm, call to action of some sort, and is going to be relationship building. And I'm very confident that long term it's going to help us, especially in these times when other forms of marketing aren't always doable. Okay, so next is going to be the return to social media. I have not been active in my clinic social media for a long time. Whether it's I didn't want to deal with it because I realized that it's very much pay to play, and especially on Facebook, if you're not doing it right, and you really got to be doing it right and spend a lot of time, be super entertaining to be able to really generate business organically and not have to spend a bunch of money on ads. And so I just for a long time had not made it a focus, but now again, getting and staying in front of people in this current situation, social media makes a lot of sense. And so I hired an intern from a local university to help us. And just a couple weeks ago, we kind of started to have our initial meetings and plannings, and we're just starting to roll out, our new strategy. We're doing daily posts on Instagram and Facebook. So if you want to see what we're doing, you can follow Carter Physiotherapy and check that out. And hopefully if you're watching this well into the future, we've built out systems that really worked, and we're still doing it, and you're not walking into crickets. but for the rest of 2020, we're going to be real active on social. And it's not we're going to use it to entertain. We're going to use it to inform. We're going to use it to build relationships. And so, like, some examples of posts we're doing is we're going to be shining a light on referral sources or potential referral sources, reposting their stuff, featuring them on our feed, and building new relationships with shares and comments and likes, and not just kind of our own posts, but also getting involved in other people's posts and trying to develop some relationships or strengthen some relationships. And not a whole ton of PT related stuff, maybe indirectly PT related, but more entertaining and informational, and kind of the things that our target market is going to be interested in consuming, not just an explanation of this form of back pain or whatever. Like, we will have posts like that, but that's not going to dominate our feed by any means. And then another part of that is getting involved in Facebook groups, getting involved in conversations, looking for when someone's talking about a pain or injury that you might be able to help with, and just being helpful, not trying to be salesy or immediately saying, DM me, I can help, but really trying to add some valuable content and response to what people are dealing with, and then maybe moving it to direct message and, going from there if they want to work with us or, get on the phone or whatever. So email, social media, continued phone training, those are going to be our biggest things in the clinic. And I wanted to finish with one other thing. I mentioned earlier about launching a new business. Before I get into that new business, the general concept of being open to opportunities, even if they're outside of your niche or even outside of your industry and your kind of your comfort zone. Really, some of the biggest wealth generating events in history have occurred when there's been a huge crash or economic downturn, pandemic, when 99.9% of the world or an area is freaking out, but, tightening the purse strings, there are opportunities created that, the true entrepreneurs who are open to looking and identifying those opportunities and pursuing them, if it makes sense to pursue them, you can do really, really well. You can also fall flat on your face. I don't know what's going to happen with my new business, but I just want to say that that if you're feeling like there's no hope, or that there's very little opportunity, and that survival is going to be the best you could possibly do, maybe try to consider that historically some of the times like these always produce new opportunities that you might be able to capitalize on if you're looking for them. So before I get into that new business, though, just an example of doing something that maybe is outside of your niche, but if it's not going to attract patients that you really don't want to work with, but you could fill a need and it's relevant to current times, then it might be worth considering. So an example is one of my mastermind members who typically is focused on working with athletes, not just CrossFit, but that's a lot of her clientele, and adolescent athletes as well. But one of the online workshops that she's going to be doing is on kind of getting the wiggles out and integrating movement throughout the day during virtual learning. As me listening to this, if you either know personally or you've heard, it's crazy. It makes me happy that our kids are still just 2.5, because the staff and people I interact with that have kids at home, and like my wife, she's a school counselor, so she's hearing it a lot. It's really tough. And so right now, parents are kind of pulling their hair out, and to have a quick, hey, here's 3 easy things you can show up and learn in 20 minutes to incorporate throughout your day so that your kids are getting their movement, they're getting their wiggles out. I think she actually uses that in the title. It's like 3 easy ways to get the wiggles out while your kids are virtual learning. It's a great title. And, so it's not necessarily her niche, but she's going to be able to get in front of parents and people who could be in her niche, right? And she's serving the community. There's going to be a lot of gratefulness for what she's doing, and that can go a long way, especially in times like this. So as long as the opportunity cost is not so great that it's unlikely to pay off for the time you might divert away from a business or from your niche, it might be something to consider, to get a little bit outside of your lane in these times when staying completely in your lane isn't always going to keep you thriving as a business. Okay, and then finally, this business that I am launching this week with a business partner is a COVID testing business. So I, of course, because of my kids' health issues, I would not be doing any of the testing. I won't even be meeting with any staff in person. I'm still pretty much just quarantined at home, other than just taking walks and driving around to get out of the house. But, my partner and I, we are putting this together, and we've learned a lot. You can imagine there's a ton of regulations and logistical things and whatnot, but next Monday, on Labor Day, we are going to be open for business. We kind of did some market testing on Facebook to see if there was some interest, and there was, and so we pushed forward, and we've hiring nurses this week. We've got a few we're hiring. Got a kind of a project manager that's going to help with a lot of stuff that I'm talking to right after I finish recording this. We've got tests on site as well as on the way, different types of COVID tests. And we're going to do it. We're going to pound the pavement and utilize a ton of the marketing strategies that I've been teaching to you guys for years to see if we can make this thing go big. We understand it's not necessarily going to be a long-term business, that the opportunity is short-lived, but it's so big that it could mean, kind of a windfall over the next 6 to 12 months if we do it right. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not sure how it'll go, but I'm confident that it's an opportunity worth pursuing, even though it means burning the midnight oil when I've already got 2 other businesses that certainly still need plenty of my attention, along with the family stuff going on. So, but the life of an entrepreneur, and it's fun, and it's exciting, and it's cool to see that there is this new opportunity that we can pursue in the midst of when so many businesses are not finding opportunities or not having opportunities. So I hope that was extremely helpful for you guys, and that you can take some of those strategies and some of those mindset components and apply them to your life and to your business, and continue to thrive through 2020 and beyond. Again, through the end of Labor Day night, use the promo code FREEDOM when you check out. It's at the checkout cart, and you say, I think there's a little link that says, have a promo code, like a little question link. You click that. put freedom in the box, click apply, 20% off everything until the end of the weekend. So let's develop some more freedom in your life, some more opportunity in your business, and keep pushing forward together, and make sure that we get through 2020 stronger than ever, and see what 2021 has in store.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cash-Based Practice Podcast. If you liked what you heard here today, we have some extremely important things we want to send you. First, a quick start guide to cash-based physical therapy and Medicare. This free ebook will provide the primary rules and regulations surrounding this confusing but important topic. Secondly, we want to share with you the 5 characteristics common to all successful cash-based practices. Find out the vital things Jarod has learned from years of interviewing cash practice owners and running his own successful cash practice. As one of our listeners, we want to give you all this information absolutely free. You can get it right now by going to drjarodcarter.com/success. Again, that's drjarodcarter.com/success. Go there now to get your copies, and we'll see you next time.